Dad, what was your don't tell mom moment? When I was 10 years old, my dad worked nights driving a big rig truck across 3 states. He'd come home exhausted every morning, catch a few hours of sleep, then head right back out. Mom always said he worked too much, but Dad would just shrug and say bills don't pay themselves. That spring, our school announced a talent show. I'd been practicing guitar for months and finally worked up the courage to sign up. When I told Dad about it, his face lit up like Christmas morning. He promised he'd be there no matter what, even though it was on a Friday night when he usually had his longest haul. The week before the show, Dad's boss called with an emergency rote. Someone got sick and they needed him to cover a double shift that would run straight through Friday night. I watched Dad's face fall as he hung up the phone. He looked at me sitting at the kitchen table with my guitar and said he'd figure something out. Dad called his buddy Mike, who sometimes covered his routes. Mike agreed to take the shift, but 20 minutes before Dad was supposed to leave, Mike's car broke down on the highway. Dad stood in our kitchen, keys in one hand, phone in the other, looking torn apart. That's when he got this crazy look in his eyes. He crouched down next to me and said, "How would you like to see what Daddy does for work?" Before I could answer, he added real serious, "But this has to be our secret. Don't tell Mom." I thought it was the coolest thing ever. Dad helped me pack a blanket and some snacks. Then we climbed into his massive Peterbilt truck. The cab was huge compared to our little Honda, with a sleeper bunk in the back and more buttons and gauges than an airplane. Dad showed me how to read the GPS and even let me pick the radio station. The first few hours were amazing. Dad taught me trucker lingo on the CB radio and let me honk the horn whenever we passed under overpasses. I felt like the king of the highway, sitting up so high I could see everything for miles. But then the weather turned bad. What started as light snow became thick, heavy flakes that made the windshield wipers work overtime. Dad's hands gripped the steering wheel tighter, and he stopped letting me mess with the radio. The roads got slippery, and I could feel the truck sliding a little on turns. We were about halfway through the route when it happened. A red sedan came speeding past us in the left lane, going way too fast for the conditions. Dad muttered something under his breath about idiots who don't know how to drive in snow. 30 seconds later, we watched that same red car hit a patch of black ice. The car spun sideways, then completely around, sliding right into our lane. Dad had maybe 3 seconds to react. He yanked the wheel hard to the right, but with all that weight behind us, the trailer started jackknifing. I felt the truck tilting, and for a terrifying moment, I thought we were going to tip over. The trailer swung around like a giant whip, and we ended up blocking both lanes of the highway. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Dad immediately checked on me, then jumped out to see if the people in the car were okay. They were shaken up, but not hurt. Within minutes, state police arrived with their flashing lights reflecting off the snow. I sat in the truck cab, scared out of my mind that we were in huge trouble. The officer talked to Dad for what felt like forever, writing things down on his clipboard. When he came over to check on me, I was sure he was going to arrest Dad for having a kid in the truck, but the cop was actually really nice. He said Dad had made a smart move avoiding that car, and because of the weather conditions, he was only getting a warning about having me as a passenger. He even told Dad he was lucky to have such a brave kid riding with him. After the tow truck cleared everything and we got back on the road, Dad looked at me and said, "That's exactly why we don't tell Mom about this. She'd never let me hear the end of it." The rest of the trip was quiet except for the CB radio chatter. We delivered the load around 4 in the morning, then Dad drove us straight home. He told me to go shower and get ready for school while he cleaned up. I was exhausted but too excited about the talent show to care. Here's the crazy part. Dad somehow made it to my talent show that night. He walked in during the second act, still looking tired but wearing his best shirt. When they called my name, he cheered louder than any parent there. After I finished playing, he came backstage and hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. Mom asked why Dad looked so tired, and he just said work had been rough. She never found out about our midnight truck run.